You are listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today we have a CPTSD episode and the title, as you see, clearly explains it. I think in the last while, and it's been a long time, which unfortunately for a lot of people in my life feels like it's taken forever, but well, it of course hasn't. But I feel like lately, for the past while, that things in my mind when it comes to my trauma, CPTSD, has been improving quite a bit. And I know that to some degree in past episodes I have discussed it, and it has kind of come back to not be true, to be proven false, that it was just my imagination or a false expectation on my behalf. But I waited, instead of being on the gun and being like impulsive to make a statement or declare anything. I waited a while because I wanted to see if that was indeed the case. I wanted to prove if this was a fluke or if it was actually true, and that I was actually improving with my CPTSD, and being able to realize in the moment that I'm getting triggered and not being myself. And I think the reason that things have been improving is it's a mixture. I've learned, and I've talked about this in previous episodes just recently, I have learned that a great deal of my problem when it comes to understanding and trying to determine why I'm getting triggered and why I'm having such a hard time recognizing that I am getting triggered and knowing what to do about it, was because I'm really struggling with emotional regulation. Regulating my emotions has seemingly always been a problem. Very often when something goes wrong or I feel like excited or overwhelmed or stressed out, a situation that's occurring in the moment is like feeling like it's just too much or that I can't handle it. Instead of the usual, like in the past, where I would immediately dissociate or like become frozen, like in a freeze state, and let the overwhelming feeling that would occur constantly when it was occurring, I would allow it to take over. And then what would happen is I would get triggered, or my parts would become triggered, and they would be blended with my adult system, or my adult part, and they would notice that I, as the adult, had no ability to, one, notice that there was something wrong and do the right thing, like to step back and to step away and say, look, I'm having a problem. I can't deal with this right now. I'm too stressed, or I'm feeling triggered, or it's overwhelming and I'm just not myself, or even saying, I don't feel like I can handle the emotion right now that's coming out, and step away and ground myself and allow my system to calm down before reapproaching the conversation or the conflict, the conflict that was trying to, pop up its little evil head. So I was always failing to do that. I could not find a way to stop myself or to stop the triggered actions and the emotional dysregulation that would occur on a regular basis. I couldn't prevent it from occurring. And so my parts were basically not trusting me. They didn't think I was capable of handling the difficult situation. And to be honest, that's really true. I'm not going to argue with that. I will gladly admit that I've been struggling to deal with the emotions. And I'm not saying that today, all of a sudden, I'm perfectly capable of handling it, that I'm not going to ever get, overwhelmed or blended with my parts. I'm not saying that. It's just that I'm noticing a lot more in myself than I used to. And noticing that all of a sudden I'm getting triggered and that the parts taking over is easier. And then the thing that I need to learn, and I am improving a great deal, is in that same time frame recognizing the emotional dysregulation that's occurring and being able to take the step that is required in order to be able to say to whoever it is, mainly my partner, that look, I'm feeling triggered, or I'm really overwhelmed. I don't feel emotionally regulated by any means. I need to stop and go and do some processing or calm down, do some grounding before I can really continue this conversation. Because if I don't, you're going to end up talking to child parts, and then you're going to get upset at me, and I'm going to get frustrated, and this is just not going to end well, like it has in the past, like it never did in the past. So I'm starting to have that ability to notice the emotions and notice what's happening. It's been small steps. It wasn't like a giant leap had occurred when I was dealing with this. And that's what I've come to realize and to understand and accept, is that the progress that I'm making and the improvement that is occurring with my parts and throughout all the complications that always seem to come up, is that this is going to be a small step process of getting better. It's not going to go from 10 to 50 and then to 80 in 2-3 sessions or three situations. It's a lot of deep understanding, trying to really listen and focus on the constructive criticism. Like, I was, for the longest time in my past, if I was being critiqued, like let's say something wrong occurred and I didn't, pick up on the fact that I was triggered and blended with my parts. I was being critiqued on what happened and what I didn't do or what I had failed to realize and step back. Is that my parts I'd get offended, or my system would get offended. So, and that diagnosis you can get, which is the offensive disorder, defiance. Yeah, the defiance disorder that has been known to both affect both ADHD and CPTSD diagnosis. And I couldn't take any kind of criticism. It would, even the smallest one, it would rarely occur. Like most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, if there was a critique that was designed to help me to understand what's going on and to further educate me and help improve the likelihood that I'm going to be okay, I would get defensive. I would argue. I would lash out. I would sound like childish. Instead of sitting there and being open-minded and shutting my mouth and listening to what's being told and trying to comprehend and be open-minded, like acting as if I didn't know anything and I wanted to learn all there is to learn about CPTSD and why these things were occurring. So instead of me, doing the right thing and being open to new information and to critiques and to being shown what's happening and why this is occurring, I was doing the wrong thing. I was being like I said, I was getting defensive. I was arguing. I was denying the reality of the situation. I couldn't understand, and I was failing miserably at being open about this. And instead of trying to take the information that was being told to me and processing it and trying to figure it out on my own, it's like my mind was just extremely stubborn, and I would ask more questions, and I would like verbally, publicly just say, I don't get it. I don't understand. And the honest truth is that I was really looking for information. Like I was trying to get more elaborate details because it's like I truly didn't understand what was going on. And so what it was doing is it was making me look stubborn and defiant, and basically like I had no desire to try and understand or to learn about it. It took a very long time to get from that stage to starting to understand what was happening, because you're not going to go from not understanding to getting it and changing your behavior. That's not how this is going to work. It's a number of steps involved to get to the point that you understand and you comprehend the information, and then you also turn around and actually put it into action and see the results. So having a difficult situation and saying, I better step back. I'm not feeling right. Something's wrong. I'm not thinking straight, or I'm giving weird answers. Something is not right. I've got to step back and go process and stop this conversation. To get to that point, you have to go through the other steps. There is no direct route. It's not like an airline where you can go from one city to another. You have to, unfortunately, make multiple stops along the way in order to get to where you're trying to go. And for some people, unfortunately, especially if you're really new into the whole process of exploring your past and exploring your parts and doing your therapy work and trying to figure things out, it can likely take a number of years to get from point A to point D or E, right? Like it's not going to be A to B. Or B could be the end point, but it's going to be like A to A1 to 2 to A3 to A4 to A5. And then along the way, you're going to have detours and you might fall back a bit. And then you have to recover and you got to catch up. And the thing with myself is, and it was hard to understand, like admitting to myself and to my girlfriend that I did indeed have an issue and that I was not seeing reality the way that it is. Like I was constantly seeing it from my point of view and being the victim and playing the victim game and blaming others and always saying, well, why can't they just do this? Why can't they just stop thinking that way? Why do they have to be so so difficult? Why don't they get that I'm not trying to say these things? I'm just trying to say, blah blah. Like, I I'm not about to give specifics here, but I was being extremely stubborn. I was having an extremely difficult time listening to what's going on, being or willing to learn and to admit to myself that this wasn't right. This wasn't exactly I wasn't doing the right thing. And the difficulties that I was creating and the stress and the frustrations and the anger and the hurt feelings that were coming from all this just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just remember for such a long time not being able to get it. And I couldn't sit there on my own and think to myself, so my parts are taking over and I'm not able to get it. Like, I can't see this. I can't feel it. I wasn't even getting there. Like, I wasn't even close to that step. I still had this inner, like, this skeptical feeling like I was being played, or that it wasn't true, or that my reality is my reality, like there was so much pain and past trauma and past feelings and stuff that was coming up that I remember, like, many times I would be like driving around, and there'd be times where I had just left the house after an argument or a fight because of something that had occurred, and of course good old me couldn't step away and couldn't figure out that, hey, look, I'm triggered, I got to get away from this. I was being defiant, and I was arguing, and I was questioning things, and instead of listening and doing the right thing, I was trying to always explain myself, or try to say, okay, if I just tell you what is going on, you'll understand, and then you won't feel bad. But of course, I could never get to the point where, hey, this isn't true. That's not actually what's happening. It was a long, curvy, tough uphill road that I was walking on, and unfortunately there was only room for the one person, myself. My therapist couldn't come along, my girlfriend couldn't come along, even none of my friends were able to go with me. It was a one person battle. And once things started to finally fall into place, and I was actually getting it and understanding all of what was happening. And the thing is it wasn't like it was all at once. I wasn't getting it at the same time, 100%. It was in bits and pieces. And there were a number of times when I thought I understood what was happening, like trying to figure out, why am I getting triggered, and why can't I see that I'm getting triggered? Why am I not able to stop myself when the triggering sensations happen? And I was failing to notice all the physical sensations that would occur. Like, my therapist would be telling me, okay, so when you're triggered, this is what you feel. Like, what do you notice, right? Like, I'd be getting excited. We'd be having a conversation, and I'd be telling him about something, and in my voice I'd be getting, like, excited, and the volume would get higher, and my tone would change. It'd be like an excited anger with some frustration in the tone, and he would just kind of stop in the discussion, and then would quiz me, or like, query as to, what are you feeling right now? What are you noticing? Like, what's going on? And of course I'd kind of stop, and I'd sit there and go, I had a hard time answering the question, because it took a long time for me to wind down from the state that I was sitting in before he told me or stopped me and said, okay, what's going on? What do you feel? And parts of me wanted to say, can't we just keep talking? I just want to get this out. I don't, I don't really like stopping. There was all this part of me that wanted to say this to him. And I didn't. I was trying very hard to believe and to trust this guy. And, you have to, if you want any kind of improvement, you've got to learn to, understand that he knows what he's doing. He's trying to help you out. He's got thoughts and ideas. He's only getting information based on what you're telling him. It's not like he can't read your mind. He wasn't able to peer into my brain and go, aha, I see what's happening. You're doing this, or this is what's occurring when you get triggered, and then you're feeling these emotions, and then you're stuck. He doesn't have that ability to see into my mind and tell me what is happening. I, of course, have to tell him, and I'm not exactly the best person when it comes to communicating and remembering all the detail when I have to get it out in a verbal way and make it make sense, right? If it were only that simple, I would love to be able to just say 10 words and everybody goes, yes, I see what he's saying. See, he means this, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody go, wow. No, that's not what's occurring. I'm the opposite. It's like they're sitting there going, huh? Wondering. That's what happens. And it's a very ridiculous situation because you don't understand. And when you're new to it, it's so hard and you don't know, right? You don't get it. And you have to try, and you have to learn and understand with what you know and what you've been told. And it's difficult because your brain, you don't have a degree or a master's degree or in psychology or in the human brain or in trauma related details or information. So you're trying your best to understand what is being told to you, to comprehend it, and to be able to put into practice everything that's being told and being shown. And then when you have ADHD on top of it, and you have a hard time remembering something that you're doing, it interferes. It gets in the way because someone like myself who has an inattentive diagnosis, you're going to struggle mightily to stay focused and to remember to do things. Unless you are really, really, really good at making all these reminders and tasks and having all the visual details to give you all the, hey, oh yeah, you got to do this. Oh, right, I forgot about that. And you're seeing all the different reminders on the board or on your phone or on your watch. Unless you're really good at making those reminders and constantly remembering and telling you that you've got to do these things, it's difficult to just have that habit of saying, oh, right, yeah, 7:00, let's do some processing. Let's check in. Let's see how the parts are doing. Let's see how I'm doing. What's new today. It's hard to continually do that day after day because life gets in the way. There are surprises. There is unexpected stuff that occurs that you don't know that is going to happen. You're not as prepared, and it's harder for you with ADHD to be able to handle it. And even to some degree, you may even have a trigger because of that, right? I'm not saying that it's an automatic for everybody, but it could be triggering. It's one of those things that you, as a person who's dealt with a lot of uncertainties, and it's easier to just have a daily path where you do the same thing all the time, or you always feel safe by yourself, or you hang out with people that are never going to make things complicated or create conflict, that makes life easy. But when things occur and you're not expecting it, that can potentially cause you more problems and bring up child parts. So let's kind of get back to the whole point of this. I've noticed a lot of this stuff, and the biggest things that are helping me, of course, like I said, is understanding my emotional regulation issues, understanding the reality of my situation, and learning slowly over time how to recognize and put into practice the things that you need to do when you get overwhelmed, when you feel stressed, when something that is difficult and possibly triggering and re-traumatizing from your past, learning how to recognize it ahead before it occurs. And myself learning how to not stay stuck and to not let the freeze stage, come into play and take over is a big, big thing, because all that I've just spoken about are major keys in learning about what is happening, figuring out how to deal with it, learning how to stop the triggers, and then after all that, doing the processing, doing the work with your parts, updating them, gaining their trust, and then eventually re-educating it, and then the neural net ways or pathways in your brain, having them start to reintegrate and get all the parts built into the process to the stage where you want to get them to be one with the adult, so that in the future, if a traumatizing possibility comes up, that instead of it, causing you to freeze or to be a childlike state of mind, that you'll be able to just go, hey, we're all right. Don't worry about it. Everything's good. I'm in control. We're safe. You're safe. Nothing bad's going to happen. And of course, you think of all this stuff and say it to yourself within a few seconds, and then you move on. And it doesn't trigger you again. This is where I'm trying to get. This is where you want to get to. It's a lengthy process. For some of us, it takes a very, very long time. It can take, and I hate to disappoint some of you, but it can take 5 to 10 years to do the proper work to get to the point where a future trigger doesn't cause a great deal of stress and pain and frustration and cause you to feel like lost and alone and scared and fearing for your life. You want to be at that point where you'll be able to stare it in the face and go, no big deal, guys. We are fine. And then go. That's what we all want, and it takes time to get there. Some of us, it's going to take a little longer. Some who have a lot of support and a lot of, people there to guide us and to help us and instruct us. And when things get rough, to be there to say, hey, it's all right. I understand. You're going to be okay. And that gives you that advantage to help you move forward a little faster and make things easier with everybody. And especially, most importantly, for yourself. So that's where we want to be. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks or so, I have made a great deal of progress to get closer to that. I know that there's going to be a lot of situations in the future that, will come up that are going to test this theory. And to be honest, I do look forward to it. I'm really eager to see if I can do the right thing, if I'm able to recognize a trigger coming on, to be able to notice that I'm having issues with emotions and then I'm getting overwhelmed. And let's see if I'm going to be able to step away right away and go, hey, I can't do this now. I don't feel right. I'm not feeling myself at this point. Can we talk about this at a future point tonight or tomorrow? I'm getting there. I'm nearly at that stage when I feel like I'm ready. And I am a little nervous because of the fact that I have had past disappointments where I thought I was, and it ended up not working out the way it was supposed to, because I really wasn't there. I was living on false expectations. I didn't see reality clearly and in present state. And I probably wasn't even seeing it from an adult state a lot of the times. My child parts were probably online, trying to protect me and doing their best to either imitate me or help me out along the way, when of course all they were doing was just causing more pain and more struggle. And my level of frustration and anger would increase and I would get to the point where I just wanted to sit back, stress eating, or I guess I want to call it eating to help dissociate from the pain and the struggles and the trauma, and to avoid getting re-triggered. That's where I was at. And it's not easy to, overcome that. And I used to be able to, without any hesitation, stop myself from doing, like, eating something that I knew was going to be I was going to regret later on. But in the past few months, it's been a lot more difficult to stop myself. And I would just give in and go for the dopamine hit. But at the same time, I was feeding my emotions to calm myself down and to avoid the conflict and the difficulty that I knew was ahead. And now I'm getting so close to not having to think about that and doing the right thing. And when I have to go and talk the difficult talk and have a conversation that I know could very well get to be heated or the tone increasing, that I can handle it, that I'm not going to get triggered or I'm not going to get emotionally overwhelmed by it. I'm so close, and I'm looking forward to it, but I'm being on the straight and narrow. I'm not too optimistic, but I am optimistic, if you get my drift. I've always been the type that when something potentially good would occur, like a job interview, possibly finding something new and fun to try, or like going on a date, like in the past, and thinking, oh, this could be the one, this would work, and it end up, failing miserably again and again. I taught myself to just try and keep a neutral feeling inside, and if it worked, great, and if it didn't work, yeah, okay, well, that's life. And it would prevent myself from getting too emotionally attached to the situation, and so I wouldn't get my heart broken, or I wouldn't feel disappointed to the point where I would give up and say, I'm never going to find another job, this is stupid, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, blah blah, all the negative things that I would say. If I could stay neutral, it would avoid it. So I'm trying to be positive, I'm trying to stay optimistic, but I'm also wanting to keep a realistic point of view on this, because I know that I've had repeated attempts of believing that I'm getting there and then fail. And then going and saying to myself, what the hell is going on? I thought I was there. I thought I was making progress. Why am I failing again? I know there's a possibility that could happen still, but I've got to be smart about this. I got to, be realistic and work hard. Take the proper steps, do the right thing, slow down, and try not to get too excited and too eager about something that has potential to not occur. That's just what I need to do. And it's healthy because it allows me to see things from a broader point of view, and if disappointment is in the future, it won't be as hard for me to handle if I were to just get all excited and get my hopes up and only think, yeah, this is going to work. I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. I'm there. I'm ready. Give it all you got. I've got to have both sides ready to step in case something doesn't exactly go the way you want. So I'm in new territory, basically. It's something that I have never really experienced, and I don't exactly know offhand what to do about it. And in some ways, I am kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but I have a lot of preparation and I have a lot of experience to back me up. And I just need to learn to keep focused on what's going on and try to be in a present situation. Try to maintain dual awareness, like be aware of everything going around me and try not to let emotions take over. If I can do that, I'll be fine. And that's the end of this podcast. I'd just like to thank the audience for listening to this podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it today. Basically, without you guys, this show would not be possible, and I wouldn't be able to make this kind of content for you to listen to. Please consider going to Patreon and become a member, where you will receive many perks to being a member of my Patreon group, such as merchandise and early access to all new and bonus episodes. Or you can donate to my cause and go to Ko-fi.com. That is ko-fi.com/livingwithadhdandcptsd and CPTSD. This will allow me to continue to create these amazing podcasts for you, the listener. All you have to do is go and donate, and it could be any amount that you feel is comfortable with, and that will be great to me. If you have comments about this podcast, why don't you give me a contact? You can contact me at Twitter. My handle is @ADHD and CPTSD, and I'd be more than happy to hear from you. Or you can also email me. My address is livingwithadhdandcptsd@gmail.com. Also, check out my YouTube channel called Living with ADHD and CPTSD, where you can see live broadcasts and replays and many recorded episodes that I've created in the past and in the future. If you listen to this podcast through Apple, don't forget to subscribe and support this show so you can continue to hear more new episodes that I make for people like you, my audience. Well, have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.